Oh, here we go. It's Monday, November 4th. It's exactly 6:01. This is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow here in Chippewa Falls on the day before the election. Or I guess now we say the day before voting ends because something like 75 million Americans have already voted in this election. A lot of people invested in this election, want to know what's going to happen. So we're going to talk a bit about that. We'll talk about that with Pete Buttigieg. The former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, knows a thing or two about Midwestern values and the Midwestern economy, what works, what doesn't. So we'll talk to him about that. We'll talk to Selena Heller, who spoke to a former Trump administration national security official about why Trump is a clear and present danger should he be put back into power. Selena also talked to a woman from Australia who is one of the many foreign volunteers who come here to volunteer for campaigns, and talking about her love for democracy and the fear that American democracy might be at risk. Kristen Lyerly will be here one day before she runs for Congress, but we're also going to talk to her about candidate health records. Donald Trump's never released his. Kamala Harris has released hers. What do her records tell us in terms of missing information about Donald Trump? All that and much more ahead on this Monday morning on Up North News Radio, starting at 6:06, 3.5 minutes from now, across the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you then.
all across Wisconsin from Civic Media. This is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. Here we go. Going to be a big week, 6:06 on this Monday morning, November 4th. One day till Election Day, or one day till voting's done. Something like 75 million Americans have cast a ballot already. It's a beautiful morning to have you here up north, live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, on the Civic Media app, or by podcast, or watching us on social media. We are glad to have you starting your day here. I have a question for you. Do you have a plan for tomorrow? If you've already voted, do you still have a plan for tomorrow to talk to other people about voting? It sounds weird because, like I said, tens of millions of people have voted already. But even a healthy voter turnout is something like 70%. Let's say it's 75%. That still means 1 out of every 4 of us isn't going to vote tomorrow. Who's eligible to vote? Eligible to vote, choosing not to. That's just off. There's something about that civic duty, that citizenship, that, playing your role so that you're not just griping about everything. So make a plan to help others vote. And again, like Alicia put up on YouTube right there, happy day before Election Day. And when I asked if she has a plan, Alicia puts up there, I do. And I think many other people do too, but nice to be aware of it. We have a busy show ahead today. Let's see. We have Pete Buttigieg, who, before he took this big job in Washington, D.C., and before he ran for president, he was mayor of a small Midwestern city. So he knows a thing or two about Midwestern values. He knows a thing or two about what makes the Midwest economy run and what things might be bad for it. He also served in the military in Afghanistan, so he knows a thing or two about national security. So we'll talk to him about the presidential race. I talked to him early yesterday morning, and we'll play back that interview. We'll also hear from a national security official from the Trump administration, who now is letting people know just how dangerous Trump would be without the guardrails that accompanied him on his first term. They wouldn't be around if he got back into power. And we'll hear what she told our Selena Heller. Selena also talked to an Australian woman, one of many folks from around the world who come to the U.S. to volunteer at election time, knock on doors, make phone calls. And in her case, it was not just because she's an American history buff, but has genuine concerns for the health of American democracy. And the whole world is watching this. The whole world is watching to see if we're willing to maintain that investment in our democracy, even at the risk of voting for a side we don't normally vote for, or if in the name of straight party politics, or God forbid, even agreement with Donald Trump, do we put our democracy at peril? So we'll hear what that woman had to say. We will also talk to Kristen Lyerly. She's running for Congress tomorrow. She's also a doctor, and I want to talk to her about candidate health records. Because Donald Trump has never released his health records, and there's certainly been more than a few signs that something appears to be off in this person racing toward 80 years old. And Kamala Harris has released hers, so what can we learn from her records that informs what we still don't know about Donald Trump? And by the way, as the ex-president ends his campaign with dark and violent ramblings, a report came out over the weekend revealing that it was a campaign staffer from Ripon, Wisconsin, who likely booked the racist comedian whose Madison Square Garden riff seemed to be the last straw for many voters. So a lot of ground to cover today, along with, of course, Brittany Merlot's forecast. Jane Matnair will join us around 7:50 to tell us what's coming up on her programs throughout the week, a program that she co-hosts with a young man who joins us from Radio Park in Racine by the name of Greg Bach. Mr. Bach, good morning. How are you? You appear to be sober, sir.
I am very sober, sir.
Okay,
I'm a sober person. Well, I'm not. I am currently not under any influences.
Okay, I was going to say, you said the comedian. I'm a sober person.
No, I am.
You saw the clip that I'm talking about. Yeah.
Of course I saw the clip. I was like, this can't be real. This can't be the world we're living in right now.
The clip is from KSTP TV in the Twin Cities. Channel 5 does the right thing for that more broadcasters should do, saying to candidates in the area, in the region really, here's some free airtime. Use it to say whatever you want instead of slick ads or whatever. Just talk to the camera. Derek Van Orden was one of those folks who talked to the camera. You didn't by chance grab a little excerpt of it, did you? Or no?
I did.
Oh, by all means, play away.
Here's Republican incumbent Derek Van Orden.
Hi, everybody. It's Derek Van Orden. I've had the honor and privilege of serving Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District for about the last year and a half in the United States Congress. And this election is about 3 things: gas, groceries, and grandkids.
He is either really sleep deprived or maybe he's nervous about being in a TV studio. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, he's not giving off a member of Congress vibe, shall we say.
He looks like he just walked off of somebody's barbecue, too. He's like wearing a flannel, and I get it. You're trying to... But wear a sweater.
Yeah.
Don't wear a hat on air. Just
and God bless the United States of America.
He reminded me so much of Floyd R. Turbo. The Johnny Carson would put on that red flannel shirt and carry the rifle. Yeah, My name is Floyd R. Turbo, American. And then he'd go off into stuff. And I never thought that it would become actual mainstream political content. But we now have Floyd R. Turbo running for Congress in the 3rd District. So we'll talk more about that with Congressman Mark Pocan, who is also slated to join us today. We have a very busy show ahead. But I have to ask you on a serious note, and we may eventually get to the Packers. They looked awful, and the Badgers looked awful, and it was not a great sports weekend, so we're not going to dwell a lot on that. I want to get to this instead. On Saturday, the Atlantic Monthly's Tim Alberta put out a very long story about the late infighting inside the Trump campaign. A lot of backstabbing and all of that. Buried in there, and it's buried for them, not for us, because I'm about to talk about a Wisconsin native. But buried in there is like the very little-known staffer who apparently booked that quote-unquote comedian who made the racist jokes at Madison Square Garden. And it turned out to be a guy named Alec Brusewitz, according to the article, who had been trying to get Trump booked on this guy's podcast, Tony Heathcliff, I think the name was.
Tony Hinchcliffe.
Hinchcliffe, whatever, yeah. He's going to be so easily forgotten when this is all said and done. But he recommended him to like a production guy who said, okay, so they booked him for the Madison Square Garden appearance. And the article captures the horror of Trump staffers as their phones are blowing up in mid-rally going, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And so we wanted to learn a bit more about this fella. And it turns out this was the guy who was making noise about maybe running for Congress. You could argue that he's the guy that pushed Mike Gallagher out of Congress. Alec Brusewitz was putting up posts when Gallagher refused to vote to impeach the Homeland Security Secretary. And he was making noises about running, saying, I'm from Ripon, I'll come back to Wisconsin and run against him. He didn't, but he did help recruit Tony Weed, who is the candidate who's running on the Republican side against Kristen Lyerly in the 8th District. But this guy, as I'm working on a story about him, I go back and find a few different articles about him in the hometown Ripon newspaper. And he had organized a protest march in Washington shortly after Trump lost the 2020 election. He was chanting, to the crowd about the election being stolen. And at a Trump rally in Waukesha 2 years ago, Brusewitz claimed his hometown of Ripon was no longer the birthplace of the Republican Party, but of the old Republican Party. He says the new Republican Party was born in June of 2015 at Trump Tower in New York City. Okay, first, ick. Second, for that to be coming from somebody from Ripon, just makes you wonder if they haven't started digging a moat, will they? Because, I mean, Ripon's got that claim to fame and somebody's trying to rip it away to be part of a cult of personality. And it's just ridiculous.
I think it says a lot that, the notion that this is no longer the GOP, this is the party of Trump. The fact that he held on to that, and he's saying, oh, the old party, well, the old party, get him. Because I think there's going to be a reckoning after this. If Donald Trump loses, I think I'm hoping there will be a giant reckoning within the GOP to massively course correct, heal wounds within the party and maybe some of the outside, but people like this will be like, you did enough. You're great. Go home. You can go home now. Go back to Ripon. Do nothing.
Yeah, run for city council, run for school board, and then try to ban books or whatever it is folks of your ilk like to do, when you're not messing up the country. So we wanted to share that note because it does touch on the 8th District congressional race and the kind of person involved in recruiting Tony Weed. And does Tony Weed think that this was a great idea, booking this racist comedian? I don't know.
He would probably tell you, it's just a joke. You guys
just
can't
a
take
joke.
it.
Yeah, we can't keep getting offended at all of these things. Yeah. I'm sure it'll be something like that. All right. Still, we do have to talk briefly about this. The Packers lost 24-14. It really wasn't that close in a very rainy, windy game at Lambeau Field. The Lions converted 2 fourth downs into touchdowns. Jordan Love threw another pick six, another foolish desperation throw that, again, reminds us he's a good quarterback. I would dare say he's a very good quarterback. He still has room for improvement. He's still young. He is still prone to making the bad decisions that a young quarterback would make, and he's made some of them. We now have a bye week to think about it. So no game next weekend. The next game is in Chicago against the Bears on November 17th. Then there's the Milwaukee Bucks. Remember, they won the season opener. They've now lost 5 in a row since then. So they're 4 games under 500 for the first time since March of 2017. They are at Cleveland tonight. The Badger football team was blown out by Iowa on Saturday night. The Badger volleyball team, the women lost in straight sets to Nebraska on Friday. And then finally, the Brewers, they waived their options on pitchers Devin Williams and Colin Ray and catcher Gary Sanchez. They traded Owen Miller to Colorado. They did pick up the option on Freddie Peralta. So again, there will be some new names to learn when spring training rolls around. Let's take a pause here, unpack some more of the news in just a bit, wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this Monday morning, the day before the election. When you're here, you're up north, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. one of my favorite song intros of all time. With apologies to Smokey Robinson, but I'll do the Linda Ronstadt version of this first. And it's part of an album that came out this day in 1978. Details in today's history lesson coming up 30 minutes away. Don't forget, you can sign up for our Unabashedly Wisconsin newsletter by heading to our website, UpNorthNewsWI.com. Click subscribe up in the top banner. Christina Laurie this morning puts together stories that talk about the stakes in this election. And then I know it wasn't her idea to go for the pun here, but after talking about the stakes in this election, she talks about steakhouses in Wisconsin. And a national publisher that put together a list of the best steakhouses in each state. And I'll go ahead and give it away, but then you can read in the newsletter more about why did this place choose Kaminsky's Chop House in the Dells. I've never been to it. Greg, don't know if you've been to Kaminsky's in the Dells or if you would nominate somebody else. I will say that when I was down in Milwaukee there for the, to take Sherry to the Air Supply concert a couple weeks back, I don't think I mentioned we went across the street from the is that the Pabst Theater? Where did we go see him? The Moe's Steakhouse there.
Oh, you saw
downtown.
him at the Riverside?
Riverside, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. Went to Moe's.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Good?
Was that good? That
Yeah.
was one of the best steak dinners I've ever had. And I've had some good ones, as you can tell.
I am not adept at steak. I like it. I enjoy it. I've been wanting to take Bridget out for a nice steak dinner because she loves steak, and there are so many options. Moe's is always one. I know Jane was telling me about a place called Milwaukee Steakhouse. It's just Milwaukee Steakhouse, the place for steak. So there's a very Ron Swanson-esque vibe I get from just that name. Milwaukee Steakhouse, the place for steaks. We have steaks. We have potatoes. What do you want?
Yep.
But yeah, I'll take her to Moe's. I'll take her to Milwaukee Steak. But those are two good recommendations.
Yeah. So I guess next time we're going through the Dells, we might have to check out Kaminsky's there. So anyway, that is in our newsletter. Again, sign up at the website. There's also our voting guide there at UpNorthNewsWI.com. And of course, civicmedia.us has Dan Schaefer's voter guide. There is no excuse to say that you didn't know what was on the ballot and what was at stake. Oop, there's that word again. Not going to give you a very formal review of a very busy weekend here. We know the rallies that were held. Vice President Kamala Harris had just a raucous musical rally at State Fair Park. So many artists, so much said about unity and coming together as we wrap up this election campaign and turning the page and starting, letting a new generation take over for governing our country. Then a little ways down the road at Fiserv Forum was Donald Trump simulating a sex act with a microphone. I just want to tell you that the headline in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, because I do love to pick on newsrooms that don't want to tell it like it is. Here's the headline: Microphone issues irk Trump during Milwaukee rally. Mike issues irk Trump during Milwaukee rally. Do you think that if Kamala Harris did that with a microphone, it would be microphone issues irk Harris? Oh, no. They'd be all over. She did what? Because again, the bar is held to a much higher standard for everybody else except somebody that we expect to behave in a trashy manner. And he lived up to it. At that rally, along with all the other dark and divisive things he said all weekend long at rallies. But at the Milwaukee one, he mentions Giannis Antetokounmpo. Well, at least we think so, because again, he didn't even attempt the name. He just said the Greek. Y'all like the Greek, right? And then goes on to question his Greek heritage. He says to him, and tell me, he says to the crowd, who has more Greek in him, the Greek or me? I think we have about the same, right? He is some. He was born in Athens. He is of Nigerian descent, but he was born in Athens. He has Greek citizenship. Donald Trump's going to be lucky to have citizenship almost any place in the not too distant future, except maybe a dacha in the Ural Mountains with a view of Kazakhstan or something like that. But to do that, and again, I'm sure you had people in the crowd looking at each other saying, "What did he just say? Did he just question whether Giannis is Greek enough?" Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that we've been dealing with in this entire campaign, and it's only getting worse. It's only getting darker, and the name calling. Kamala Harris, you can disagree with her. That's all right. There's nothing wrong with disagree. If you think that her policies are bad, if you actually think Donald Trump's policies are good, that's fine. But this is somebody who has worked in all three branches of government. This is somebody who worked their way through law school, became attorney general, has been a senator, has been vice president, is the Democratic standard bearer. There's no end of, ways that she has proven herself. But she's stupid. She's, low IQ. There's some coded language for you. And that's really all he's got in these final days is just the name calling, because there has not yet been a stable plan presented by Trump for what he would do. He keeps saying, "I'll bring the good times back." They weren't good. They were really bad at the end. And the good stuff was the stuff that he inherited from Barack Obama. Because yet again, you had Democrats cleaning up the previous mess, which would have been the mess from the George W. Bush years. And on it goes. So it was crazy to see a headline over the weekend that says, "Whoever wins will inherit a great economy." Well, nice of you to finally notice now, because there hasn't been back-to-back Democratic administrations for a while. It has followed a familiar pattern of Democrats get tagged as somehow being fiscally reckless. Republicans come in, and every Republican administration has left the economy in worse shape. Democrats have to make the investments. By making the investments, they get tagged as tax and spend, the way that Eric Hovde's trying to get away with it with Tammy Baldwin. And with any luck, folks have finally figured out not to let this cycle repeat itself and maybe continue to let the good times roll and only get better and better. Kristen Lyerly is next. You're Up North. Well, hello there.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How
Are you? Oh, wow. You don't. So there's just something wrong with you. Just
Why?
Because you should be looking bedraggled and just exhausted and bone weary. And
Well,
you're
I
not.
really walked in on a fun part of this conversation.
I'm really. I'm busy calling Lyerly a robot. Stop it. So.
I'm having a blast. I don't
You're
get
always
it.
having a blast. You were always when are you like, nah, it's fine. It was fine.
I'm still kind of recovering from the chill yesterday at the game.
But of course, big smile on your face with the photo there. So yeah.
Yeah.
You had fun.
Yeah.
Did you make a win or lose plan like for the weekend or something? Like, no matter what happens, we're doing X.
For the weekend?
Yeah, well, for the post election, either you and the boys, or you and Craig, or you, Craig, and the boys. Do you guys have a plan, or is it all completely open ended?
I have to go to work.
Well, yeah, there's that, but I mean, you get days off.
I have to go to Minnesota and work for a
yes.
long stretch
Okay.
on Thursday.
And then after that stretch,
It all depends on what happens.
okay.
Well, because
like a
of the
politician can't answer the question.
can't say if she's gonna ever see her boys again. So,
well, it depends because if I have to go to Washington D.C.,
Well.
that's one path,
mm-hmm.
and if I don't, then I have got a little bit more free time.
Okay, all right.
A lot more free time.
You got to elect her, folks. Don't give her that much idle time.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yep.
But the thing is,
my.
like, Kristen Lyerly free time is different than like Greg Bach free time.
Oh yeah,
Kristen
yeah.
Lyerly free time is like I
Like,
biked
oh.
to Canada, and I saved 28 bears' lives.
Yep.
And, talked to children. And me, Greg Bach, like I watched The West Wing again.
Oh, did you watch SNL with John
Of course I
Mulaney?
did. Yeah.
Every time he comes on, he does a bodega skit, a
Yeah.
bodega musical.
Yeah.
And when that bear came out, I just lost it. I'm like, why is it? It's such. Every one of them is like a love letter to New York. There's some
Yeah.
inside New York references there. I thought it was a really good show. So.
He
I
also
thought Kamala
talked
did
about
well.
his family in East Troy, Wisconsin.
Yes,
he did. Yes. So,
And I thought to myself, did my family know his family? Because my family comes from Western Waukesha County.
ooh, all right.
So I know.
Let's explore this.
Ooh,
Here we
okay.
All right. It's always a good day if you can start it with little Delbert McClinton. Delbert has a birthday today. We'll tell you about that in a couple of minutes. Greg Bach is here. So is Dr. Kristen Lyerly, OBGYN and candidate for Congress tomorrow in the 8th Congressional District. Dr. Lyerly, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so ready. Let's go, 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 go.
Shouldn't you be tired or something?
Yeah,
shouldn't you
right.
we all look like, I was talking to Todd Alba last night, and he sounded like I should just drop him off at the funeral home,
Oh, no.
because he's finished that bus tour and everything. And you're out here going, yep, having fun, running for Congress.
yeah.
This is great. Yep.
I get to go hang out with Governor Evers this morning, and all of these people who are so enthusiastic, and they've got all of this energy, and they're trying to make a change in the world, and I get to be part of it. So, come on.
Now, listen to this next one. So yesterday was an awful day. It was windy. It was rainy. The Packers played miserable. Just a miserable game all around. Now, what photograph do I see on my social media feed? A very wet, bedraggled Kristen Lyerly. Biggest smile on her face possible because she's at a Packer game with her friends.
Oh, we were having so much fun.
Of course
and we
you
were even
were.
sitting with Lions fans.
Well, that's fine. I mean, we're always good to the visiting fans.
Yeah, they were having a better time than we were.
Well, they were.
Because they're a better team than you are.
Yeah, they are. But nobody was
Yeah.
throwing batteries at them or anything like that. We're very good fans here.
Ugh.
But you did go to the game. You did have a good time.
Yes.
Okay.
I stayed, I dressed well.
Mm-hmm.
I wore rain gear. My sons did not. They also had a good time, but they were soaked. They were in bad shape.
And in like 4
Who's
days'
their
time, one of
mother?
Yeah, in 47,
You know,
I want to be like, Mom, I need some soup.
I told them if I've learned one thing as a mom, moms, you'll know what I'm talking about here. You can tell your kids so many things, but they will not listen. So it is not on me if I say a raincoat is a good idea for you today, as we're looking out the window and it's raining and we know it's going to rain the entire time.
Whatever,
And they're
Mom.
like, "No, I'll be good." Will you? Okay, let's check back in a few hours. They were
Soup is in
fine.
the
They were
pantry.
happy.
The soup is in the pantry. I don't want to hear from you if you get
Yeah,
sick.
yeah. Here's the can opener, and get your own damn chicken noodle. Let's see, you're a busy candidate. Did you catch Saturday Night Live anyway, or were you conked out?
I caught the beginning.
Okay, John Mulaney, which, by the way, nice to have him back from rehab. He seems to be on the straight and narrow. You know, he and Olivia Munn just had their second child, which is great. But the thing I wanted to bring up was every time he comes, that the show definitely kicks it up a notch, and he always does these weird musical numbers, and they're always centered in a bodega in New York City with all kinds of inside references. You'd have to watch the news to get what's happening in New York, and I'm laughing, and Sherry's kind of looking like, well, it's funny. It's not that funny. Yeah, I thought it was that funny, and they did a good job. But he brings up the Wisconsin connection to family.
Yeah.
Yeah, East Troy. He talked
Yeah.
about his grandparents.
Yes,
Yeah.
his grandparent, who was too old to fight in World War II. And he thought that was really funny.
Yeah, his grandfather was born in 1902, and I was thinking to myself, because my family comes from, like, we were like, came from Buffalo, New York to Manitowoc, and then moved down to Waukesha County, and we've been in Waukesha County for, oh dear Lord, like 100 years. And I'm wondering myself, gosh, did my grandfather know John Mulaney's grandfather?
You and the Mulaney clan,
Maybe.
there might be ties.
You
Who
go
knows?
way
I'll
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Just
we're
like
buds,
just like Kristen and Kakana,
I did that yesterday. I was knocking doors in Kaukauna. I ran into my old assembly rep, a Republican, who had a yard sign that said Republicans for Harris.
All
But he
right.
didn't have one of my signs. So even though he wasn't on my list, I knocked on his door and we had a delightful conversation about what it used to be like and what it's like now.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
great job.
Yeah.
Great. That's the doors. You know what? Still, and Selena's going to be here in a bit talking about, talking to campaign volunteers. And, well, wait, you had a story as well that not everybody is nice knocking on the doors. You had one particularly gruff gentleman over the weekend as well, right?
Yeah, he said, "Are you a Democrat?" And I said, "I am." And he said, I know. And he actually like visibly recoiled. And I said, "But when I'm in Congress, I'll be representing you. I mean, we can have a conversation." And he pretty much slammed the door in my face.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
whatever. But then yesterday when I was in Kaukauna, I was talking with a woman and, initially she was a little skeptical. And the more we talked, when her husband came home, she said, "Honey, I want you to meet Kristen. She's from the North Side and she's one of us." And that meant so much to me because I am.
That is great. Wow.
That's a great tagline. No,
Yep.
Kristen Lyerly. She's one of us.
She's one of us,
Yeah.
You using it in a good way, not the
Exactly.
the creepy way that Trump uses it, Let's turn then for a minute and talk about campaigns and the presidential campaign, because something that caught my eye over the weekend about medical records. Oh, it was Trump's inability to open up that garbage truck door, which is still just the best visual of the whole campaign. And that he was kind of dragging his right leg. And there's been a few other videos of him dragging his right leg. And we've never gotten any medical report on the, alleged bullet that nicked his ear. But just never anything from him, except that one doctor. Remember that goofball? Was it 4 or 8 years ago that looked like, something out of a Hollywood, comedy movie? He just looked so goofy. But on the serious note, we do know Kamala Harris's health records. It occurred to me that we know she released them. So I actually went back and looked at the letter from the White House physician about it. And it's very detailed. All of it is good. All of it's positive. But I wanted to ask you, Kristen, and so you took a look at it as well. What can we glean from what Kamala Harris was willing to share through her doctor versus what we still don't know about Donald Trump's health?
I was really surprised at the detail that Kamala Harris's physician shared about her health. I mean, it read like a medical note. Her vital signs were in there, the exam results were in there. It was very comprehensive and descriptive and helpful, I think, as a citizen who wants to make sure that my next president is going to be healthy enough to be able to complete the job. This is clearly something we don't know about Donald Trump. And everything that we see about him, whether it's dragging that leg or having a hard time grabbing the door handle or his behavior, I mean, he clearly is showing signs of dementia. So it's very concerning to me as a citizen who is about to hire somebody who's going to represent this entire country, arguably the most important job in the world. This is a 4-year job. This is a 4-year commitment. He's barely making it through the end of the campaign.
Right. I mean, we're learning things in her report about, family history for colon cancer and the vitamins and supplements that she's taking, her aerobic training, her diet, has never been a tobacco user. You get, the heart, no unusual heart rhythms, no liver or spleen enlargement, full range of motion. Cranial nerves, motor, sensory functions are all normal. And we don't really know that about Trump, except to say that he can recite the words, what was it, man, woman, doctor, TV, or something like that. Camera. Yeah. Nothing about his blood work. What do we see in that? We see that in the Harris report here. There's an electrocardiogram report that's in here. And again, all these are the basic things to know if somebody is up to the job. And I think that you're seeing now, and I mean, he was nearly talking to a half-empty arena at one point over the weekend, that people have kind of seen this. They're hearing the dark gloom. He's just kind of mumbling his way through some of these things now. And I think it should be concerning to those remaining folks about whether they're voting for somebody who is up to the job.
Concerning, I mean, you saw the microphone incident in Milwaukee, which was just horrifying.
Yes.
I mean, really, he talked for 4 minutes about how terrible the microphone was, but then he made some really just unbelievable gestures for anyone on a public stage.
Right.
And for someone running for president of the United States, that I was repulsed.
Mm-hmm. And rightly so. And again, I really took issue with the way that news media just kind of like said, oh, Trump was angry about the microphone. No. And, again, if Kamala Harris had done that, or pretty much anybody else, probably would have ended the campaign right then and there. I think I actually have somebody, CJ here saying Trump has totally lost it. If any other candidate did the sex acts he did on stage, you'd haul them off to the nut house. There's something seriously wrong with him. Thank you, CJ, for putting that comment in on Facebook. And it is just very concerning. But
I'm looking at Greg's face, and he's just like, you don't get to see Greg Bach's stone face very often.
For me, I think the reason why we saw such a detailed medical report coming from Kamala Harris is because if she had any less than that, it would be, well, she released her medical report.
What is she
hiding? There's not this information, and how come there's not this information? And honestly, as far as like Trump, first of all, why does he do all the weird things in Wisconsin? Why does he do all the weird things in Wisconsin? And then I'm done with the mainstream press covering him. They're just trying to eke through. They're hoping that if she wins, they can start maybe reporting better. If he wins, they're going to have to continue to be nice to him because who knows what he'll do to them in retribution. But I am ready for tomorrow and ready for this week and ready for hopefully what will happen if all my people come through for me.
I'm definitely hearing that from all the volunteers and people that I've been talking with. I think that is a constant source of stress. People are telling me they're not sleeping well, that they're having problems eating. Like they're so stressed out about what happens next. And, the people I'm hearing it from most commonly are women because they know what's at stake, and we're seeing them voting in record numbers because their lives depend upon it.
Oh my goodness, the voting and the messaging out there to remind women that their vote, is secret and they can cast it any way they like, and that there have actually been men reacting with, well, that's why my wife votes absentee, so I can see how she's voting. I mean, people will actually say that and believe it and want it. And I don't think this Iowa poll, that if you haven't heard about it, a very reliable poll, historically accurate poll in Iowa, caused a political earthquake over the weekend when in this Des Moines Register, it was published that this poll, which had Trump up 18 over Biden, I believe, earlier this year, maybe it was 20 points, had him up 4 points over Kamala Harris like a month ago. Now has Kamala Harris up 3 in Iowa. Now that's by no means any guarantee, but it's not a reflection of early voting, the pollster said, but they are definitely seeing something in women. It's not just your typical gender divide. It really is, Kristen. We've talked about this for almost 2 years, for 2 years now, that in all these red states, when abortion rights are on the ballot, women from all walks of life show up and they're voting. And we keep asking, is it going to carry through till November 5th, 2024? Is it going to carry through? Sure as every indication it is now.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't an issue like the economy. The economy waxes and wanes. Cost of goods are always top of mind for people. But this is an existential issue that people understand this is not going away. I was talking with some of my friends, OBGYN doctors in Iowa, who have started a PAC and they started political organizing. They've been doing the work on the ground. And it's so satisfying to see it culminating at this point in time where they know they need to have these gains. They need to be able to win this election in order to restore their rights. Women are here for it because they know what's on the line.
Yeah, and it is going to be really the story of this campaign, I think. And again, everybody's hesitant to make any predictions. And I love the phrase that we're all using now. We're not cautiously optimistic. We're nauseously optimistic. Watching the trends, and that we think what we're going to be looking back on is once again being saved thanks to women all over, especially in rural areas crossing over, Black women, suburban women, and frankly, so many other groups that have felt so marginalized and now so insulted or so threatened that, they're no longer just saying, well, what can we do? They're showing what they can do.
And men who are getting it for the first time
Yes.
because they're starting to understand what the stories are.
Exactly.
And that's a really important population that we haven't been able to reach.
Yeah. We're going to kick off our history lesson with a little Frank Sinatra and Count Basie, but it's all about Quincy Jones, whom we lost overnight. We will talk more about that in our history lesson. Selena Heller joins us as well. That's next. You're Up North. And there's Miss Heller now.
Good morning.
Good
Pat,
morning.
I just got a message from Brittany. She's not feeling well this morning.
Oh,
but
okay.
she sent a forecast along to me that I'm going to forward to you.
We need Rob. We need Rob from Tigerton.
Yeah, send it to him. Get on the phone, Rob. Read this for us, would you? Okay.
All right, I'm going to send this. I'm going to send it to you right in a moment here, and you'll have it in your inbox.
That's a great on the text line, Joel from Madison. Authoritarian induced insomnia knows no gender.
Right.
So true.
All right, it's sent to you now. Ugh. Saw a vote Jill Stein for president ad on a website.
Okay. Gross.
Yeah.
I don't feel, though, that she's had the traction or
No.
the attention that she's had in the past.
She's definitely given this year. I've seen way more negative attention towards her. People being like, and it's something, Pat, you said months ago. It's like, if you guys are really interested in being a third party, you'd be on the ground 4 years. I mean, it wouldn't just be every 4 years, it'd be every year. You'd be putting yourselves into these local races, but you just show up 8 months before. It's, yeah. No, thank you.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot more of that now, thankfully. Okay, let's see.
All right. Here we go.
10 seconds.
The Sands is proud to present a wonderful new show, A Man and His Music. The music of Count Basie and his great band.
This is my favorite album. Sinatra Live at the Sands.
Wow.
And the man is Frank Sinatra.
If you don't just love it for Sinatra, if you don't just love it for Count Basie, love it for Quincy Jones, who produced the show, produced the album, went on to do a few other little things, you know, like Thriller and Bad and We Are the World. But he's also basically the last connection to the big band era, in working for, you know, Dizzy Gillespie and a whole host of, you know, the greats, Duke Ellington. I mean, you name it. He worked with them and had this musical talent that is, you know, once in a century that he had. Quincy Jones passed away last night at the age of 91. I could recommend that album. I could recommend the most recent documentary about him put together by his kids. It is more of a history lesson than you could get from any one textbook, is just to study his life. Quincy Jones lost to us at the age of 91. A good run. Welcome to today's history lesson. Selena Heller from Up North News joins us as well. Selena, how's your weekend?
It was good. I was busy.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, a lot of people coming through town.
Yeah, we're going to hear from some of them in just a minute here. But before Kristen has to leave, Rob's chiming in already from Tigerton. I got to see Kristen in New London. I have never been involved in a political campaign before, but Kristen has put together very wonderful and friendly people. I really enjoyed being with them. Saturday, I was honored by the Tigerton Main Street Association for my volunteer work. I volunteered over $1,000 worth of labor to help the Tigerton Main Street. I wore my cap from Kristen proudly, getting word out about her. Rob,
man. Rob defines community. He does the work in Tigerton. For generations, his family has done it. Now Rob's carrying on the tradition.
Yes, he is.
Volunteers are so valued. I gave out those awards when I was at the city of Eau Claire, because just helping out is just so, you can't do things without wonderful volunteers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Just so essential, everyone, and we really appreciate it. All right, let's get to the rest of today's history lesson. I already gave away one of the birthdays today. Blues rocker Delbert McClinton. We're just getting to all Pat's favorite albums today. This is from 1992's Never Been Rocked Enough. Delbert McClinton, born in Lubbock, Texas, this day, 84 years ago. Ralph Macchio is 63 years old today. I'm going to pause and let that settle in.
No.
The Karate Senior.
Jeff Probst is 63 today. Loretta Swit from MASH is 87 years old today. There was a little album released this day in 1997 by an up-and-coming artist named Shania Twain. Her third album was entitled Come On Over. Here was one of the few tracks that made it to the top of the charts.
Let's go, girls.
Oh, that feels very timely, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Doesn't it?
You want to put on your hip huggers and your bare midriff and go to the mall. All right.
Or at least the voting booth.
It is.
You had this. You had the title track. You had That Don't Impress Me Much. You had Honey, I'm Home. From This Moment On. You're Still the One. Love Gets Me Every Time. Don't Be Stupid. 40 million copies sold, the world's 8th best-selling album of all time. It was a
And your
juggernaut.
husband while doing this album.
Yeah. And that's a story, not for morning radio. But yeah, Shania Twain released that album on this day in 1997. On this day in 1972, reggae was becoming more of an influence in pop music. Here was the number one song by Johnny Nash.
I can see clearly now the rain is gone.
It was the first tune with reggae influences to reach the top of the Billboard's chart. On this day in 1973, during the oil embargo, the Netherlands held its first car-free Sunday, where the highways were used only by people on bicycles or roller skates.
Okay, let's go.
That should have lasted. Yes.
Come on, Greg.
That should have been a thing.
I got my roller skates at home. I can bring them.
All right. The
Pom-poms?
Well, yeah. The number one album this day in 1978 was Linda Ronstadt's Livin' in the USA. Just love that voice. The number one single in 1978 was Anne Murray's You Needed Me. The number one single this day in 1989 was by the Swedish pop rock duo Roxette. On this day in 2008, Barack Obama became the first person of biracial or African American descent to be elected president of the United States. This is National Animal Shelter Appreciation Week. This is National Traffic Directors Day. The ones in traffic, not like the ones for radio stations and other companies, not that kind of traffic director. This is Easy Bake Oven Day. So in honor of that, I have started to make you guys a little something in an Easy Bake Oven. It'll be ready in 6 months.
You can't use an LED light, Pat.
Oh, that's
You gotta
sorry.
use the old-fashioned light bulb.
Kristen, this is our send off. Good luck tomorrow. Anything else you want to say before the 8th District renders its judgment?
LFG people, let's do this.
All right. Thank you for everything, continuing to visit when you've got such a busy life here, for all the segments that you've done, like Tony Notes. Maybe we should have one called Women Win Wisconsin or something like that. So
How about Women Won Wisconsin? Let's do that on Thursday.
let's do that indeed. Thank you, Kristen. All
Thank
right.
you all.
Good
Have a
luck.
great day.
Hey,
Yeah.
Kristen.
Selena is coming back with some more stories from Up North News, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. All right. So we're going to do Olivia Troy first, and then Jenny Lee second.
Okay.
And yeah, then we'll be done by 7:20 to do Pete, and then I haven't gotten email back from Mark Pocan, but I'm pretty sure he will pop up at 7:30.
Oh.
Shane Matner at 7:50. Going to be a busy one.
Woofda.
Yeah, and then I think I'm going to. Let me do this. I think I'm going to finish the show, start to pack up all the gear, and do the 9 o'clock, and then I'll probably hit the road from Madison not long after that because I want to make sure that I can get everything all set and ready to go here. So, in terms of radio station equipment and things, and I don't have anything outstanding with you right now, right?
No, but I was going to send something probably.
Well, no, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Definitely sooner the better.
Okay, I'll try
So.
to get that done.
All right, sounds good.
I have some more sound bites too that could go today. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah, if Sharita can come in, So, all right. Sounds good. We will be back in a bit.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Welcome back to Up North News Radio, unabashedly Wisconsin, brought to you by Courier Newsroom and carried by our friends here on the Civic Media Radio Network. It is 7:06 on this Monday morning, November 4th. One day to go until Election Day, when we wrap up tens of millions of votes, count them up, decide on a new president, Congress, legislature, referendum races, school referendum issues, all sorts of things. If you haven't made a plan to vote yet, make a plan, especially in Wisconsin where it may be rainy tomorrow and you don't want to use the weather as an excuse. And you should also not use an excuse. I don't know, it's on the ballot. Yes, you should know. Head over to Dan Schaefer's voter guide at civicmedia.us or the Up North News voting guide at upnorthnewswi.com for all of the latest information. Meteorologist Brittany Merlot is a little under the weather. Nobody likes that pun, but there it is. So we hope that she feels better soon. She does note that there is a dense fog advisory in much of west central Wisconsin for early this morning. The state forecast for today from Brittany: cloudy with areas of fog, scattered showers, and a little warmer today. Upper 50s in the north to upper 60s in the south. A southeast wind at 7 to 15 miles an hour. Tonight, cloudy with areas of rain. Some fog is possible. Lows in the upper 40s north to the upper 50s south. Variable winds and light. For Tuesday, mainly cloudy with occasional rain showers. A few thunderstorms are also possible. Low 50s northwest to the mid 60s in southeast Wisconsin, and a south wind at 8 to 18 miles an hour. Tomorrow night, showers will end in the evening, partial clearing and cooler, with lows Tuesday night, mainly in the 30s, though there will be some low 40s in southeast Wisconsin and a northwest wind at 5 to 10 miles an hour, and weather updates all throughout the day across the Civic Media Radio Network. 7:08 now, and of course the Packers lost, I guess, bigly. Would that be an appropriate description there, Greg? It was not pretty. Selena Heller also joins us. What kind of a word do we want to put on it that we can use on the radio? He hastens to add.
I mean, it was a 10-point loss, right?
No, it was more like a 30-point loss, it felt like. But yeah, 10 on the scoreboard, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they lost.
Although
it wasn't a blowout. It wasn't their best showing, but
you are very kind. I like that. You are on the sunny side of this, and I appreciate it. Because again, it's one game. We're heading into the bye week, right? You know, we got time to get better and not throw pick sixes anymore. That could happen. So here's hoping. So there's that. And, you know, again, hearing from Kristen in the rain, you know, and still having a good time at the game is kind of what you need to know, you know. Let's see. Rob did send us a note from Tigerton on the weather. It is foggy and 51. Tigerton got 1.6 inches of rain on Sunday. I went to church Sunday to pray we get the right type of people to represent us. I watched the Packer game. They played a bad game. Bad. There's the word. Rob, you got the right word. They played a bad game. But the Lions are one of the best teams in the NFL. I got a doctor's appointment to get my blood pressure checked, and my shoulder is stiff. So let's get that all taken care of, Rob, please. And let's see, from Alicia, she writes on YouTube, Pat, how nervous were you the first time you were on the ballot, which would have been back in 2006?
Good question.
I have to say I was much more in the way that Kristen is. Like you've worked your heart out, and all you can really do is at this point, you know, you feel like you made your best case, and it kind of felt good. I have to say, it's like, okay, I've done this. It's something new, something very scary. But now we wait and see. And as somebody who has won an election and lost 2 elections, I know which one felt better. but I know that in all 3 of them, you know, you go in there really, really kind of appreciative that you feel like you're doing your share. You're kind of doing a little bit more than you typically would as just a voter by being a candidate. Other people do more by being, say, a volunteer. And so Selena has talked to some of the campaign volunteers, but you've also talked to so many surrogates who've come through, including, let's start with one who was a national security official, a homeland security official for Vice President Pence. And she's been rather outspoken ever since about the dangers she sees in Trump getting reelected.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So a group of Republicans for Harris came through town the other day, just on Friday, and just to listen to them talk about how, like, she uses the word terrifying, and she says she doesn't sleep at night thinking.
And by the way, she would be Olivia Troy.
Olivia
Yes.
Troy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
who you're talking about, one of them that came through town. She just talks about she can't sleep thinking, well, if he gets back in the White House, if Donald Trump gets back in the White House. She resigned in 2020 under the Trump administration.
Yeah, let's give a listen to what she had to say coming through the Chippewa Valley.
When I think about what is at stake for the future of our country, what that looks like under Donald Trump, we should be worried, because this is a man who's shown himself to believe that he is above the rule of law. This is someone who is willing to put himself, before and above the Constitution. This is someone who's shown that he wants to maintain power regardless of the will of the people who are voting. What does that look like for our country going forward? And what does it truly mean for our democracy and what we stand for? And so I am worried for what it means in terms of political violence in our country. I'm worried about what it means for our communities. And I'm also worried about what it means for women.
Okay, that was a 43-second clip. The first 40 seconds, national security, totally get it. But in those last 3 seconds, you really hear something else from the heart from her. What it means for women. Something we've already talked about. And I know, Selena, you've heard that from other people. You've seen it in their eyes.
Oh my goodness. I've talked to so many people that are so worrisome. And even, so I was at Gwen Walls, also the First Lady of Minnesota, came through town on Saturday, and listened to her and all the people talking leading up to her talking. And all the people knocking on doors were talking to me about when they go out and talk to people. And one of them was just oof, it got to me, because a woman came to the door, they said, I am tired of people telling me what to do. And I do not want this. I have a 13-year-old girl, and I do not want this for her. And just that them retelling her story, just coming to the door in her bathrobe, just everyday people just in their homes thinking about these things. And I've just talked to countless people all in these last several months about their personal stories, whether it be IVF, whether it be abortion stories, or just getting the services they need to stay alive. There's just so many stories that, the votes will affect.
The stories that are coming, the voter turnout numbers that are coming from senior women, and somebody found a right way to express it. These were women who were around 18, 19, 20 years old when Roe v. Wade came out. They know what life was like before Roe, and that women could not access abortion care. They could not access contraception. They could not open bank accounts. They couldn't get a checking account in their own name. All the other things that they see in danger of going away, of being stripped away, which you say, oh no, these things aren't going to be stripped away. Well, that's what people said about Roe v. Wade. And, for a Supreme Court with 3 Trump justices to do that, and then to do what they did to give Trump, immunity for what they defined as official acts, has a lot of people concerned, not just about women's health and the economy, but about democracy itself. And that takes us to the other person that you're going to share with us today. Folks who come, we've talked to people who come from other states. They come to Wisconsin because it's a battleground state. They feel like their activity can make a difference. But we get people from around the world who want to come make a difference here.
It was unbelievable. On Saturday, I talked to people from several other countries, Canada. Oh my gosh. And they did come from other states. They brought a camper and set up because Wisconsin is important in this election. And they don't want to see democracy fail. That's what they told me. But these two Canadian gentlemen, it was a man and his son. They came and are working all of this week, and they said words like, this was kind of a favorite word. They said, Donald Trump is uncouth and unsavory. That's how I'm going to describe unsavory.
There you
now.
go. Put that down. Donald Trump, uncouth and unsavory. So if the Brits, the Canadians, and the Aussies are going to tell you that, there must be something here. We've got an Australian woman we're going to hear from.
Jenny Lee, she's from Sydney, Australia, and she came. She's going to be here 2 weeks total, just getting out the word here in Wisconsin.
Let's give a listen.
In the modern world, certainly, your revolution of 1776 is taught, very deliberately in our country, as is the French Revolution. And the subsequent development of how you have worked your democracy and faced, the challenges of government for the people, by the people, of the people. And I think Americans would be surprised at the number of Australians who could quote the Gettysburg Address. So the sense that if democracy fails here, it is in danger everywhere. And so 2024, the year of elections, at some level, you could say democracy has never had more of a presence in the world, because more millions of people than ever before are going to the polls. And yet, we are so aware that the democracy project across the globe is, at risk. And it's at risk here.
She's quoting the Gettysburg Address to us and talking about learning the Gettysburg Address because the world knows the importance of this democracy. Mary writes in on Facebook, canvassing with people here from Australia, and she was canvassing with a Franciscan nun from Chicago. Delightful to spend time with. Texas and California represented as well. Chris Hambuck Boyle puts on Facebook, thank you for Selena for bringing these stories to life. Just all kinds of great people to visit with. And Selena, we appreciate you sharing the stories.
Oh my gosh, they're incredible. And
They were.
just Jenny Lee was incredible to talk with.
Well, thanks for sharing that. You have a great day. And when we come back, we're going to hear from my Sunday morning interview with Pete Buttigieg about him being a surrogate for the Harris-Walz campaign, especially bringing the experience of being a mayor of a Midwestern city. This is Up North News Radio, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back. All right, we are clear, and I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Congressman Mark Pocan is about 15 minutes away here on Up North News Radio. Electionia says, don't be stupid. Make a plan to vote tomorrow. Or if you've already voted, hound some friends or family and make sure they do the same. The stakes are very high, of course, in this election tomorrow. One person who knows that well is Pete Buttigieg. He's been the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He's been a presidential candidate, a cabinet secretary. Now, in a personal role, he's a surrogate for the Harris-Walz campaign, and I talked to him Sunday morning. We chatted about Midwestern values. We kind of continued the conversation you just heard about national security, and also keeping in mind to be patient with these election results. They take a while. The first numbers are always unofficial, then they're certified, they're audited. There's a reason that our elections are free and fair and safe and secure. And so here is Pete Buttigieg talking with us on Sunday. Mr. Buttigieg, thank you for joining us on Up North News Radio. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Well, appreciate you here, except for the one concern. You're the no longer secret weapon when it comes to making appearances on Fox News and other far right media. Did we do anything wrong that you're here today? Have we started drifting to the right or something, or you've come school us on some stuff we've been saying? I hope not.
Hey, we try to be broad spectrum here, just like we got a coalition that ranges now from AOC to Dick Cheney. We want to make sure we're reaching media across the spectrum too.
Yeah. Hey, in that vein, there's so much talk about the swing states and, of course, some of the big cities like Milwaukee here in Wisconsin, but you were mayor of a small Midwestern city. We are full of small Midwestern cities here. So I wanted to start by asking, based from your experience, what folks in those small cities around Wisconsin need to know about what would be the difference between a Harris presidency versus another Trump presidency from that Wisconsin community standpoint.
Well, first I'd start with the kind of values that I think Midwestern communities have, including the ability to disagree without it turning into a political death match. And, unfortunately, this kind of dark version of politics that Donald Trump has been selling for the last 10 years has made it harder and harder to do that. She's been very clear that she wants people who disagree with her at the table, just like there's a lot of Republicans in her campaign. While he has made clear that he thinks if you're an American citizen who disagrees with him, you're the enemy, which is just a dangerous thing to have in the most powerful person in the country. A little more close to the ground, I grew up in a community where they told us all the factory jobs were gone forever. That's changing right now. In South Bend, where I grew up, in Michigan, where I live now, and I know for a fact that's changing in Wisconsin too. Matter of fact, we're seeing an all-time record high in terms of factory construction. At least ever since they kept modern statistics, there have never been this many people in the building trades, building factories all at the same time. And that's something we've really got to work hard to keep going. Most folks I know in Midwestern communities, they aren't looking for more tax cuts for the rich. And however they might feel about very personal issues like abortion, they tend to believe that a woman ought to be the one making that decision, which is, of course, what we believe, what she believes, and why we really want to reverse Donald Trump's decision to end the right to choose. Last thing I would say is just, there's so many communities where I think people grew up getting the message that if you wanted to succeed, you got to get out. I thought that was true coming from the Midwest, only to discover that I found meaning and purpose in the part of the country that I came from. And fell in love with a teacher who went to school at Eau Claire, and we live and are raising our kids in Michigan. And we're working hard to make sure that the communities that we come from, including smaller communities, that they thrive into the middle of the 21st century.
We've spoken a couple of times with people who have been national security leaders during the Trump administration, but I want to go there again because I feel like you would have a unique perspective on it from a national security standpoint as somebody who has served the country. And again, the differences between what a Harris administration would do versus a Trump administration when it comes to our own security, when it comes to our global standing, and frankly, global security as well.
When I was serving in Afghanistan, the people that I served with, if we were going outside the wire, they could have cared less what political party I belonged to. They just want to know that I could do a good job, and vice versa in terms of how I looked at them. We had the American flag in common, and that was enough. Unfortunately, Donald Trump's taken us down a very different path, one where anybody who disagrees with you is the enemy. The other thing that really strikes me is, many of these military leaders are very non-political. The last thing they would normally be comfortable doing is weighing in on partisan politics of any kind. And it is astonishing. I don't think that there's any precedent in modern memory for this many people in national security. We're talking four-star generals, and we're talking about people he appointed, his political appointees, who are now saying, don't let this guy anywhere near the Situation Room. He doesn't have our best interests at heart, and Americans will be less safe if he's in charge.
Last question then deals with the election and public confidence in it. If Donald Trump either fall short, or if things are in flux, in the middle part of the week, we know what he's going to say. And there are some folks who are going to believe what he says about fraud or insecurities or things. What's your advice to Wisconsin voters if it's taking a while to count, and if like 4 years ago, Trump supporters are expressing all of these doubts, whether rooted in fact or not?
The way an election is supposed to work is, if you don't win, you pick yourself up and move on. That's what I've done when I lose an election. It's no fun. Having won and lost, you'd definitely rather be winning, but you don't turn around and trash the system for political benefit. My main message is, we've seen this before. This is exactly what he did 4 years ago. Count on trusted sources, your Secretary of State, your county election administrators, not somebody who has already made it clear that any outcome besides him winning, he's going to try to undermine. And remember, last time around, they tried to challenge the legitimacy of the election. They had about 50 lawsuits. They lost every single one of them. And the reason is, in a court of law, you have to actually support your claims with evidence, and there are penalties for lying. That's why he does so much worse in a court of law than he does on Twitter or some of the other places where they spread false information. So again, listen to credible sources and know that your vote will be counted, and that good people are making sure that every eligible vote, and only eligible votes, are counted in this election.
Pete Buttigieg, thank you for your time. I hope we get to talk again soon about making some big plans for 2025. But in the meantime, thanks for spending some time with us. Good luck this week.
Same here. Thank you.
Now turning our attention back to things that are happening today here across Wisconsin. You've got Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and his wife Gwen will be in La Crosse this afternoon, then Stevens Point this afternoon, and then Milwaukee this evening. His counterpart, the Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance, is also scheduled to be in La Crosse today. Congressman Mark Pocan is going to be with us next. This is Up North News Radio, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. All right, we are in the break. Hello, Mark.
Hey, how you doing, Pat? Can you hear me?
Yep, hear you just fine. How are you?
Great. I am good. I think I got a little bit of a cold, but if you're not sick by the end of this thing, you're not doing it.
Yeah, or you're Kristen Lyerly, who just never, is never has a bad day. Anyway, all right. Well, we're good. You look good, sound good. So I'll tuck you back in the waiting room for about 4 minutes here, and then we'll get rolling.
I'll be right back, and I'm going to hit mute in the meantime.
Perfect. you heard this song so much in 2008, culminating on this day in 2008 when Barack Obama was elected president of the United States. Election day is tomorrow here across Wisconsin, and here to tell us more about it, Congressman Mark Pocan, who's on the ballot himself, but is also feverishly, busily helping so many others in races tomorrow. Congressman, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks so much, Pat.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you being here on, on such a tight deadline, given all that's happening here. Obviously, the big congressional races are, we've talked to Kristen this morning up in Northeast Wisconsin. And then, of course, the 3rd District, Becca Cook versus Derek Van Orden. Up in the 8th, I'm going to start there just long enough for folks that missed it over the weekend. Tim Alberta writing in The Atlantic. Let it be known that it was a Wisconsin native, a Ripon native named Alex Brusewitz, who essentially all but was the one that pushed Mike Gallagher out of office, made noises about running. Then he recruited Tony Weed to run in this district. That he's the one who booked the racist comedian for the Madison Square Garden rally that basically, ended any forward momentum that the Trump campaign had. At least that's my view of it, and I wondered about your own view of where the Trump campaign appears to be swirling in such a close state like Wisconsin at this late date.
Yeah, I mean, we feel cautiously optimistic, but with a number of good indicators on campus in Madison. Just as an example, the 5 wards that make up campus, the number of new voter registrations. If you compared that to the cities around the state, just those 5 wards in Madison would be the 4th largest municipality by the number of new registrations. So we've got a lot of new voters coming out. We also know that much of the early vote has been up to, at some point last week, about a 10-point advantage women to men. And usually it's about a 4-point advantage on early vote. So that's another good indicator. And then honestly, Pat, just doing doors, talking to folks, people will say stuff like, I was in West Baraboo, a guy came out, his wife came out, said they were voting for Harris, pointed out the neighbors who were voting for Harris, but didn't want to put up a yard sign. They said they had an Obama sign, a Biden sign, but they just didn't want trouble from MAGA neighbors. Well, that means it's the opposite of 2016 when they had a silent majority, people who didn't tell pollsters they were voting for Trump but did. This time we've got folks who are in the exact same place. They're supporting Harris, but not doing it because of the extremeness, I guess, really of the MAGA movement. So when you add all that up, that we're the silent majority, we have a lot of new registrations, a lot more women are voting than men. We've got a number of indicators that look good.
Yeah, the Wisconsin Elections Commission reports more than 102,000 registered voters were added to the rolls just in the month of October, including 12,000 in Dane County, 14,000 in Milwaukee County. Folks are registering not just new voters, but people who had never voted before, but have definitely been motivated to come into this race. In the 3rd Congressional District race, we talked earlier this morning about Derek Van Orden's appearance on Twin Cities TV. It didn't exactly make him look good, but I mean, he's had trouble looking good throughout this entire thing. But he has had, much like Eric Hovde, no absence of money on their side. And if anything is making Democrats nervous, it's all this billionaire money running all these fear factor ads like they did against Mandela Barnes, and voters hoping not for a repeat.
I think people are smarter this time. I mean, they're looking at what they actually hear Trump say. There was a classic video that I saw, I think it was just yesterday. I think I posted it on my X account where Trump is talking about his again, he's obsessed on rally size and how he always fills all of his seats and no one leaves early. And literally the cameraman, while he's talking, pans all the empty seats at the rally and a bunch of people walking out, leaving early. And, at some point, I think, rational people who really have to decide about the future of the country see that and realize either you just want an entertainer in chief and you think somehow his form of racist entertainment is what you want, or you might be cautious and say, my daughter deserves better, my niece deserves better, my wife deserves better. And I think at the end of the day, I do think that there is momentum on the Harris side and just the opposite on Trump, especially since that rally in New York City.
And let's not lose too much sight of the Janet Protasewicz election, because I still believe, although we don't talk about it as much, but there is a motivating factor in those new maps for the legislative races, that legislative races are not already baked in. They are more competitive than they've been in about 2 decades. And again, I'm not saying that that's a big mover of the needle, but in this state, anything that moves the needle is a big deal.
Yeah, and there's great candidates running for the legislature. There's a real chance for the assembly to flip. The Senate will be ready in 2 years to flip just because half of their seats are up. But you're right. That's driving it from the grassroots up, additional votes. And I think you're going to see a really huge turnout. But all indicators are looking good. I think, the real kind of deciding points are what's going to happen in the 3rd district and what's going to happen in the 1st district congressionally. Peter Barca running against Brian Stiles run a really strong race. And I think the stronger Harris is, the better that is for Peter Barca. And the 3rd district, I mean, Derek Van Orden, if he had any more feet to shoot, he just doesn't. And tries to give us plenty of material just by his day-to-day activities. I noticed he did tweet for 24 hours between Saturday and Sunday. And I had to put out a poll to find out if his staff took away his password, if he just had a little too much of a Saturday bender, or if he finally looked at a poll and realized that his normal shtick isn't necessarily working. But, Becca Cook has run a very strong race and raised a lot of money. Got up on TV. And while I think there are some missed opportunities of pointing out more about Derek and giving him a chance to talk in a debate or in some other formats, I think that race looks, very strong. In fact, there's, I believe it's 5 or 6. Now, I can't believe I'm forgetting right now, 6 UW campuses in the 3rd congressional district that have more undergraduates combined than I have at UW-Madison. And that could be a real swing vote as well.
Oh, yeah. We talked to the chair of the College Dems last week, who pointed out just all those campuses in and around the 3rd district. Last thing to ask you about then, of course, is the U.S. Senate race. I talked over the weekend to Minnesota Senator Tina Smith, who was campaigning through the Chippewa Valley on Tammy Baldwin's behalf. And here is somebody who, again, has a strong record to run on, but in a way is swimming upstream against, a lot of garbage that's kind of spewing out the special interest spigot.
Well, I think something we learned, I mean, Tammy's obviously incredibly qualified and I believe well-liked. She does most of her work the 5 years prior to an election year because she's getting things done for the state. And, she's a workhorse, not a show horse. So you don't see her on TV all the time, but she gets a ton done. I think what we're seeing is how much big money can really influence elections. Eric Hovde came in with 20 million of his own. I saw another tens of millions of dollars coming in from Republican interests. So when you have that, you can really distort messaging. And I think they've had a lot of really, very biased commercials going out there trying to make some points that certainly fall into the bigotry realm that the Trump MAGA folks are so good at. But I just think we have fewer people who vote for both parties. You're team red or team blue often, and we don't have a lot of those independents that cross over. But I think Tammy has been polling slightly better than Harris on a regular basis in Wisconsin. She certainly deserved it. And I think at the end of the day, people got to decide, do you really bring in a transplant from California to be your Wisconsin U.S. Senator, or do you keep the person that's actually delivering for the state?
Right. I mean, you can give the same old messages over and over again, but I recall Bill Clinton in 92, the confidence that he had saying, that dog don't hunt anymore. And while it does with some voters, there's fewer and fewer all the time like that. Congressman Mark Pocan, I know you got to run off to an event. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck tomorrow. Can't wait to talk to you on the other side about, what this all means as we head into a new year. Safe travels to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. Take care.
You bet. It is 7:43 right now. And let's see, I wanted to get a few texts up that had been coming in on the text line 855-75-CIVIC. Let's see this one from Tom in Jackson. Hi, Pat. Who is the pleasant sounding lady that is helping you on air this morning? Based on when you sent that in, Tom, I believe you were talking about Selena Heller, Up North News reporter. Selena was formerly a reporter at Channel 13 when I was an anchor there, approximately a million years ago. And Selena later went on to work in several other fields. And then we were able to draw her back into doing news reporting. And the stuff she's doing for Up North News is just stellar. There's nobody she can't talk to and talk about. So we really appreciate having Selena as part of things. And a text from Joel in Madison. Oh, this was about asking, Kristen saying that many people are sleeping. Selena saying that she's hearing many people aren't sleeping. And Joel in Madison sends a note. Authoritarian and induced insomnia knows no gender. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. We have a lot of anxiety out there, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, we have that all the time. I think we have a higher dose of it this time. And I think we just need to remind ourselves that, come Thursday or whenever the results are final, I mean, that's it. There's nothing else you can do about it. You take the results, you say, okay, here's what we do with it. Let's move on from here. You're not going to have one party controlling everything. So let's look at where the cards are, and then we see how we play them. Was that Jane Matnair walking into the workplace there?
That was Jane Matnair walking into the workplace. Right?
I love that. I love a workplace. There's Jane. Hi.
It's like a Marvel movie where you're like, why is Ant-Man in this movie? Oh my gosh, a cameo.
Tony right away noticed he puts up on YouTube, Jane, with an exclamation point. So
Jane sighting. A Jane sighting.
Yep. So yeah, we are nominally a radio show, but there's enough people watching for the little Easter eggs that are in the background all of this time. So anyway, we wanted to share some of the texts that come in, and you can certainly share yours as well at 855-75-CIVIC, 855-75-CIVIC. I wanted to also get back to, I mentioned briefly with Mark the report about the racist comedian who was at Madison Square Garden, who was apparently brought on board by Ripon native Alex Brusewitz, who had been a political consultant earlier in the year, then joined the Trump campaign. I just highly recommend the story in Atlantic Monthly. Now, you can get a good digest of it. I wrote a summary of it over at UpNorthNewsWI.com. But I think you'd really do well to check out the full article. For the infighting, for the backstabbing, but it's just a really interesting look at how when you've got somebody like a Donald Trump with no discipline whatsoever, it's how a low-level staffer can get a racist comedian booked for an event at Madison Square Garden. People look at these well-run campaigns like, oh, does that just happen? It doesn't just happen. Good people, very organized people make these things happen. Greg, I know it translates even into what you do on the weekends. The ones who've done their prep work, and the ones who just walk up to the mic and go, oh, I'm naturally funny. And then they are not.
Yeah, well, that's when we tell you to come to the open mic. You're not getting on our stage if you just think you're funny. You're gonna work.
I'm gonna
your
riff.
Way onto, yeah. I made that mistake once. I said that before to him. I go, I'm just gonna talk, and it was 5 minutes of miserable performing. So yeah, that he opens up a whole nother can of worms of discussion points, and he came, but when it happened, he came at people pretty hard, saying they just don't understand joke, and the backlash has continued, and he has been very quiet because if Donald Trump loses this election, he might be one of the contributing factors to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people believe it. I think Tony actually put up here on YouTube, Shane Gillis joked on his podcast about how this comedian might be the reason Trump loses. It was a funny show, funnier than the comedian was.
It really is. I mean, a lot of people, too, are saying, like, this is what happens when you don't have writers writing for you, because he's not a funny comedian, and that's just the fact.
And again, compare that to the Harris campaign, where the national media doesn't like that she's staying on message, but you see in rally after rally, overflow crowds every time, because these are people who want to hear that message. They want to hear about hope. They want to hear about unity. They want to hear about getting things done. Getting things done for you, that they don't want to hear America is a garbage can. They don't want to hear that, Kamala Harris is stupid when, she could run circles around Trump. So when you're calling the woman stupid, you're exposing your own true colors.
Yeah. You don't want to hear someone talking like a 7th grade bully.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just what it is. He's a 7th grade bully child of a boy.
Yep. And we, again, I think people were tired of it all along, but a lot of them stayed home in 2016. They didn't stay home in 2020, and I don't believe they're staying home in 2024. More from Ms. Matt Nair and about what's coming up on her program next. You're Up North.
Check one, check one. Bingo.
Boom. All right. Yeah.
There she is.
Check one, check one.
Can you hear yourself?
Check one. No. Check one.
I hear you just fine.
Check, check, check. Yes. Okay, this is awkward.
I know.
Let me come around you. Go this way.
Oh, I see. All right. 30 seconds.
Jane says, I'm done with Sergio.
Just about 8 minutes till 8 o'clock. Time to bring things in for a landing for Up North News Radio for this Monday, but not before. You know, behind every good producer, there's a pretty good talk show host, and so cleverly standing behind Greg Bach is Jane Matinaire. It's
Good morning, Pat Kreitlow.
It's an interesting illusion you guys have created here. So
Yep, I was running a little late. I got out of the house a little bit late this morning. I had to pack up and get some things organized because after the show today, I am driving to Madison for the
Samesies.
Yeah,
Hey.
samesies for you. So I had some last minute packing I had to get done, and I got out of the house late, and I didn't get enough time to set up. So here I am standing behind Greg Bach.
I love it. It's perfect, and this is the kind of week it's going to be.
Yes.
You know, I will be the show will be in Madison Tuesday and Wednesday mornings, and tomorrow we will have Deborah Cronmiller, executive director of the Wisconsin League of Women Voters, and we will have Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski joining us. You have an ambitious agenda today as well before you get Election Day rolling.
We do. We're going to be talking to Alexander Vindman at 10:33. This is the second time he is joining us. Alexander Vindman, of course, had really important testimony during the first impeachment trial of Donald Trump over the quid pro quo, basically, that he asked for from Ukraine. Essentially, that's, yep, I know we approved this money to give to you, but I'd like you to do me a little favor first.
Yeah.
Alexander Vindman's testimony was critical in that first impeachment hearing. And then Derek Mosley from the Lubar Center at Marquette is going to be joining us from 11 until 11:30 today. And we'll wrap it all up as we do every day now with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. I haven't landed on a thing yet, although there's something that happened Friday night at Fiserv Forum that I think should definitely not
Be a thing.
A thing.
No.
Yeah.
No, it shouldn't. And I wish you luck talking about it.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's well, it's not the kind of thing that you would expect we'd have to talk about from former presidents, engaged in really gross behavior on stage. So we'll get more into that. And please, let's make sure that Wednesday's edition of This Shouldn't Be a Thing isn't like a whole day long thing, looking back at Tuesday as we look at the results. This shouldn't be a thing.
Drinking on air. Oh my God. Oh,
This Shouldn't Be a Thing shot edition.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. But we know it's so many things can happen depending on turnout. It's going to be rainy tomorrow. There's going to be a few people, believe it or not, going, they probably don't need me after all. Yeah, they do. They need you.
Every single vote counts. And don't forget about that constitutional amendment that is on the ballot in which they want to change one word from every U.S. citizen, which is how it reads now, to only U.S. citizens, which is what they want to change it to. In my estimation, this is an effort to open the door to narrow that definition of who is going to fit under only.
It is. I mean, when you see what's happening in Virginia right now,
yes,
where they are taking anybody that they suspect might not be a citizen and dropping them from the voter rolls, including plenty of people who are citizens.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what would happen here. If you're not bringing, your birth certificate with you to vote or other required paperwork that shouldn't be required to vote. And there was a statistic someplace, maybe Deborah Cronmiller will have it tomorrow for us from the League of Women Voters, how many women, who go through name changes in marriages and their paperwork isn't necessarily up to date.
Yes.
And if they live in, let's say they live in a very strongly Republican area and people think that they're a Democrat, they'll be like, oh no, sorry, you can't vote without the right paperwork. And this amendment would make that so much easier.
Yep, absolutely. So I voted no when I voted early. I would highly encourage everyone to vote no against this constitutional amendment. Good heavens, what's going to be next? I have to give the doctor who delivered me at birth to prove that it's just, it would be, it's a nightmare. And by the way, this amendment brought to you by ALEC.
Yes. The American Legislative Exchange Council, the right-wing group that is basically provides the cookie cutter legislation for state legislators around the country to then introduce and get passed. Let's also not forget that along with that constitutional referendum, there are well over 100 school referendums that are on the ballot. Very easy rule of thumb. Yes to the school referendum in your hometown. No to the legislator who gave us the environment for needing over 100 referendums, because they're the ones that have been lazy and not doing their share in funding our public schools all these years.
Absolutely, Pat. There's so much opportunity this time around for us to make actual measurable change. And some of these legislators who have been in there potentially for too long, who don't like to engage with their constituents, who loved when they had gerrymandered maps so they didn't have to respond to anyone, those days are over. Let's change some things.
Oh, it would be, again, the possibility for change is with these new maps is enormous. And again, it doesn't mean everything's gonna change overnight, but it means you're making those steps to have changes happen, much like the Janet Protasewicz election led to the conditions that we have in this election. It would all be so useful. What do we have on YouTube here? Oh, from Tony. Jane should put a hand on Greg's shoulder like that old-timey Western photo. Greg looks off in the distance.
We lost 12 kids to scurvy.
We could make this a thing. Actually, we could start doing this with the. This should be a thing. Is this Monday visual? And what is Jane? Jane could hold up like something that Greg can see on the monitor. We'll figure out something here. I like
this. There's potential. We got potential.
We're gonna workshop it. It'll be great.
All right.
Thank you, Jane. Have a great show.
Pat. We'll see you tomorrow in Madison.
All right. Greg Bach is back with Jane in 2 hours for Matt and Air on Air. Up North News is the Wisconsin outlet for Courier Newsroom, a pro-democracy news network building a more informed, engaged, and representative America. Follow us on social media. Sign up for our newsletter, UpNorthNewsWI.com. Have a great Monday. We'll see you tomorrow morning from Madison as we broadcast in spirit up north.